Madagascar, the fourth largest island in the world, is home to about 29 million people. But of those 29 million people, about 74%, or 21.4 million, live on the eastern side of the island, away from mainland Africa. Which is weird because typically populations orient themselves towards their nearest neighbors due to the need for cultural exchanges and trade relations. So why is the western half of Madagascar so empty if it's so close to other countries in Africa? We're heading back to Africa after quite a while. I think the last video I did of the continent was about Nigeria, which is very different. So I'm quite excited to explore the geography of Madagascar with you right now. And special shout out to my community here on YouTube who helped me fill out some of the content at the end when we talk all about Madagascar's piratey past. Speaking of countries, tens of thousands of you have already checked out my new podcast, Around the World, which means I'm doing something right. So thank you for watching and listening. And if you haven't yet, check out my previous episodes on the Netherlands and Quebec, and stay tuned for another episode tomorrow, all about Portugal, with Gil from the YouTube channel, General Knowledge. Madagascar, the fourth largest island in the world, is located off the southeastern coast of Africa and boasts a unique history that is quite unlike most other African countries. In fact, while humans have lived and evolved in Africa for hundreds of thousands of years, they wouldn't arrive to Madagascar until much more recently. The first people to have arrived in Madagascar are theorized to have arrived between the years 500 and 1000, although some evidence does suggest earlier settlement. These initial settlers were Austronesian peoples originating from Borneo who traversed the Indian Ocean using sophisticated outrigger canoes. This Austronesian migration was remarkable not only for its distance, but also for the way these people brought with them farming techniques and domesticated animals like chickens and bananas, significantly altering the island's ecology. This means that the people of Madagascar have quite a bit in common with those who live in the Polynesian islands of the Pacific. But sometime around the year 900, Bantu migrants from East Africa also made their way across the Mozambique Channel to Madagascar, contributing to the island's diverse cultural and genetic makeup. This blend of Southeast Asian and African influences created a distinctive Malagasy culture with its own language and traditions. The Malagasy people organized into various tribal kingdoms that, over centuries, evolved into significant chiefdoms and monarchies such as the Kingdom of Imerina. The Kingdom of Imerina, located in the central highlands of Madagascar, was a pre-colonial African state that played a significant role in the island's history. Established in the early 1500s by King Andriamanelo, it was initially a small kingdom among several larger competing chiefdoms. Over the centuries, however, Imerina expanded its territory and influence, especially under the reign of King Andriana Poinamarina in the late 1700s. He implemented administrative reforms and military strategies that unified the central plateau and established Antananarivo as the kingdom's capital. Imerina's power peaked, however, in the 1800s during the reign of King Radama I, who embraced modernization and established diplomatic and trade relations with European powers. This period saw the introduction of literacy, Christianity, and new agricultural practices. However, internal strife and external pressures eventually weakened the kingdom. In 1895, the French invaded Madagascar, and by 1897, they had annexed the island, ending the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Imerina and incorporating it into the French colonial empire. Despite its eventual downfall, the legacy of Imerina remains integral to Malagasy culture and history. Colonial rule was marked by resistance and struggles. The Malagasy Uprising of 1947 was a significant yet brutally suppressed revolt against French colonial authority. This uprising was a crucial factor leading to the reconsideration of Madagascar's status. Gradually, political movements grew, demanding greater autonomy and independence from colonial rule. Madagascar achieved independence on June 26, 1960, following a peaceful transition that was part of a broader wave of decolonization across Africa. Philibert Tsiranana became the first president of the newly independent Malagasy Republic, marking the beginning of modern Madagascar's statehood. Since independence, Madagascar has navigated a challenging path of political instability, economic trials, and environmental conservation efforts. Madagascar is quite unlike other African countries. For one, direct European involvement in its affairs didn't begin until far later than most others. But also, its physical geography is very unique, and we're going to explore that geography right after you hit that little subscribe and like button. Nah, I'm just kidding. Let's go! Madagascar, an island nation located off the southeast coast of Africa, stands out for its striking geographic diversity. This large island, the fourth largest in the world, features a variety of ecosystems, climates, and landscapes that range from lush rainforests to arid deserts. Its physical geography is profoundly shaped by its isolation from mainland Africa, a separation that occurred roughly 185 million years ago, when the landmass that comprised Madagascar, Antarctica, India, and Australia would break free from what was then a combination of Africa and South America. Madagascar would then break free from the Indian landmass around 88 million years ago. One of the most notable aspects of Madagascar's geography is the sharp contrast between its eastern and western regions. These differences are primarily driven by the island's topography and climatic conditions, which influence each region's ecology, land use, and human settlement patterns. The east coast of Madagascar is characterized by a narrow, low-lying coastal strip that fronts a steep escarpment leading to the Central Highlands. This region is dominated by dense tropical rainforests, which are part of the eastern Madagascar lowland forests and the Samburano region, areas rich in biodiversity. The lush vegetation is supported by heavy rainfall, which can exceed 137 inches annually, especially in the northern part of the east coast. The constant and substantial rainfall results from the prevailing trade winds that sweep in from the Indian Ocean, bringing moisture-laden air that rises and cools over the highlands, releasing precipitation. This area is one of the most biodiverse in Madagascar, home to a vast array of plant and animal species, many of which are endemic. The intense rainfall and rugged terrain have historically limited extensive agricultural development and large-scale human settlements, preserving much of the natural landscape, but also posing challenges for development and connectivity. In stark contrast, the west coast of Madagascar features a much drier and more varied landscape. This region is sheltered by the high central plateau, which blocks the moist trade winds, creating a rain shadow effect. As a result, the western part of the island has a more arid and semi-arid climate, receiving as little as 15 inches of rainfall annually in some locations. The western region is characterized by dry deciduous forests, baobab trees, and thorn forests, which stretch down to a broad coastal plain. This area, however, is significantly more developed in terms of agriculture compared to the east. The dry climate and flatter landscapes have facilitated the cultivation of crops like maize and cassava and the rearing of livestock. The contrast between the eastern rainforest and the western dry forest exemplifies the ecological divide that runs through Madagascar. This divide not only influences the biodiversity and environmental conditions, but also affects the socio-economic activities and cultural life of the people in these regions. For instance, fishing is predominant along both coasts, but the types of fishing practices and species caught vary significantly between the east and west due to differences in ocean conditions and ecosystems. But this difference in geography underpins something pretty unique about Madagascar. The vast majority of its people are oriented towards the east, away from Africa and towards the Indian Ocean, something you might not expect given natural trade paths. Madagascar has a unique population distribution. Over 20 million of its residents live on the eastern half of the island, despite its frequent and heavy rainfall and the dense rainforest that characterize the region. This orientation towards the eastern side of the island, including the general location of Antananarivo, the capital city, can be explained through historic, economic, and ecologic factors. Historically, the eastern coast of Madagascar was the initial landing point for the earliest settlers, who arrived from Borneo and other parts of Southeast Asia by navigating across the Indian Ocean. These settlers found the eastern coast favorable for landing due to its facing the Indian Ocean, which provided more accessible maritime routes compared to the more remote western coast. Over time, as these populations established themselves, they exploited the fertile lands and abundant water supply offered by the region's climate, which supported the growth of rice paddies and other agricultural activities. The climatic conditions of the east, dominated by a wet tropical climate, support a lush landscape that has historically provided more resources for farming, fresh water, and building materials compared to the drier west. This abundance is crucial in a country where agriculture remains a primary economic activity and a critical source of livelihood for a large portion of the population. The rainfall, although heavy and sometimes a cause for floods, ensures a year-round water availability, which is less reliable in the western parts of the island. Antananarivo, located in the Central Highlands but leaning towards the east, epitomizes the preference for this eastern orientation. As the capital and largest city, it is not only the political and economic heart of Madagascar, but also a central node in the network that links smaller towns and rural areas of the eastern regions with international shipping routes via the Indian Ocean. This strategic position has spurred development and attracted migration from various parts of the island, compounding its growth and the concentration of resources and services. Furthermore, the eastern orientation towards the Indian Ocean has implications for international trade. With the east facing the vast Indian Ocean and directly connected by sea to other parts of the world, including Asia and Australia, it naturally became the focal point for international trade. The port of Toamasina, located on the east coast, handles approximately 80% of all maritime traffic for the country and, as such, necessitates a large, skilled workforce. Conversely, the western coast, with its orientation towards mainland Africa, features a harsher, drier climate and a landscape that is less hospitable to intensive agriculture. The sparse rainfall and frequent droughts made large-scale agriculture challenging early in the country's history, limiting population growth and economic development. But also, Madagascar simply doesn't have that much trade with its nearest African neighbors. In 2022, Madagascar exported just $9 million worth of goods to Mozambique, a paltry sum compared to the $4.25 billion in total that Madagascar exports each year. This means that large ports and large port cities simply have never really materialized towards Africa in a way that it currently does towards India, China, and Australia. Today, Madagascar is home to about 29 million people in total, and of that 29 million, about 74% live on the eastern half of the country, leaving just 7.6 million, or 26% of the population, in the west. This would be led overwhelmingly by Antananarivo with 1.3 million people, followed by Toamasina with 327,000, Ansarabi with 245,000, Fianarantsoa with 189,000, Antsiranana with 131,000, and Hellville with 109,000 people. In the west, the largest city would be Mahajanga with 245,000 people, followed by Toliara with 170,000 people. And that's basically it for the major cities in the west. But one fun bit of history that I left out was Madagascar's piratey past. Madagascar has an interesting history just by itself. But one bit of history that I found to be geographically fascinating was the fact that, for one period of time, Madagascar was one of the largest pirate havens on the planet. During the 1700s, the Americas were well colonized and relatively exploited by European powers, and that meant that fleets filled with indigenous treasures were less frequent in the Caribbean trade routes. There also happened to be far more warships patrolling the region. As such, pirates began abandoning the region altogether, and instead, they made their way to Madagascar. The island's strategic location along key maritime routes attracted famous pirates from around the world, such as Captain William Kidd and Henry Every, also known as the King of Pirates, both of which sought refuge and wealth on Madagascar's shores. The pirates established settlements, the most notable being the pirate utopia of Libertalia, though its existence remains a blend of myth and reality. They formed alliances with the local Malagasy tribes, engaging in trade and sometimes intermarrying, which created a unique cultural exchange. These interactions had a profound impact on the local economy and society, introducing new goods and ideas. Pirates used Madagascar as a base for raiding ships in the Indian Ocean, targeting the lucrative trade routes between Europe, Africa, and Asia. However, by the mid-1700s, increased naval patrols by European powers and changing political dynamics led to the decline of pirate activity on the island. Despite their relatively brief presence, the legacy of pirates in Madagascar is fascinating and shows the unique way that when the geography of one region changes, it can impact another region far away. In a way, Madagascar has always been more oriented towards Asia than Africa, and this is maintained into the present day due to the island's unique geographic features and the presence of major trade routes connecting the island to China, India, and Australia. Did you enjoy today's video all about Madagascar? Then head over to my map store and check out some of these amazing maps. Each one you buy helps support this channel. If you enjoyed learning all about Madagascar, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to watch more videos, you can do so here. Thanks for watching.